Zootopia is doomed. Yeah, though you might look at this happy-go-lucky city of Disney animal people and think it's a utopia, it's not. If a place like this actually existed scientifically, it would be on the brink of collapse without enough food, and its people might have to resort to the darkest option. Hello Internet, welcome to Film Theory, the show that would absolutely be an anthropomorphized St. Bernard. I'll bring you the subscribe button when you're trapped up on the mountain and in dire need of help. Go on, take it! So today we're pulling a bit of a Disney, friends, and how is that? Well, it's because after 9 long years, we're finally getting to a sequel to one of our biggest theories ever, Zootopia. Yeah, along with Disney revisiting this world with its sequel, I wanted to make another theory about it. And fun fact, but that first Zootopia theory is legit the 5th most viewed video on this entire channel. And let's just say that 2016 thumbnails were something else, huh? In case you never got this one on your radar, or it's just been a while, Zootopia is the story of Judy Hopps, an anthropomorphic rabbit from a small town who has big dreams of becoming the first rabbit police officer in Zootopia, a large city where all sorts of animals live in harmony. Throughout the film, she ends up forming an unlikely partnership with Nick Wilde, a red fox and one of the city's resident con men. And together they unravel a massive conspiracy and bust a government-led cabal out to frame all predators as violent. They then save the city and tons of innocent people and end the film as official partners on the Zootopia police force. The film was surprisingly great, one of my personal favorites from the House of Mouse in the last decade, and it's one of the internet's favorites too. Yeah, this one spawned a lot of fan fiction, like a lot of fan fiction. Too much, some would say. Enough that Disney sat down to make some officially sanctioned fan fiction with the sequel because, hey, they want more money. But you know what? Where some might see a cynical cash grab sequel, I see an opportunity to dive back into an interesting world with an old school theory. See, if you sit down and look at the world of Zootopia, how the city is built, how its people interact, and how you'd even think about supplying such a diverse range of animals, the city is sitting on the edge of a crisis and they don't even realize it. Yeah, friends, this is as classic a film theory as film theory can be. Looking at this fun, creative, silly, fictional world and taking it as seriously and scientifically as possible. And at the other end of that, well, Zootopia is doomed. And the only thing that might save it from its biggest problems? Cannibalism. Well, kind of. Man, science-y and a dark Disney theory? You're getting a 2 for loyal theorists. So without further ado, let's do further and hop into why Zootopia is doomed. Reason number 1, weather modification. Let's kick off this indictment by hopping into our police chopper and getting an aerial view of the entire city these films take place in, shall we? The main portion of Zootopia is broken up into 4 sections, or districts. To the west, you have the hot and humid rainforest district. To the east, you have the arid Sahara Square and Arctic Tundra Town. And finally, in the middle, you have Savannah Central, the actual city part of the city, where most of the first movie's plot takes place. Now, at first, having all of these diverse habitats all packed into one area makes perfect sense from a world-building perspective. I mean, if I were trying to design a fantastical city built for all sorts of mammals, from rabbits and jaguars to camels and polar bears, this is exactly where I'd land. It's only natural, pun intended, that there would be different ecosystems for the different citizens. It's creative and fun. But the how they would make this happen would be a disaster. Near the beginning of the movie, when Judy first travels to Zootopia, we see her go on a bit of a train tour across the city's different districts. Outside of the city, we see a temperate climate, similar to the American Midwest, maybe something closer to the Pacific Northwest. But as Judy enters the city, we first see Sahara Square before passing into Tundra Town. And as we make that transition, we get a look at this. This is what is known as the Climate Wall, a huge, skyscraper-high array of heaters that blows hot air into Sahara Square while simultaneously blasting cold air into Tundra Town. And later in that same scene, when Judy's train moves into the Rainforest District, we see that the rain in this rainforest is actually mostly caused by giant sprinklers hidden up in the trees. Of course, these biomes recreate a lot of the natural habitats of the peoples of Zootopia, so they can feel comfortable in the city. They can wear what makes them feel natural, and nothing would make them feel more natural than a watch from Holtzkern, our partner for today's theory. So a good watch can complete any outfit, and I do genuinely love wearing them, but finding one that's both classy and affordable, it's gonna be a little bit difficult. But thankfully, that's where Holtzkern comes in clutch. Holtzkern makes watches and jewelry for both men and women, and I mean, just look at this. It's gorgeous. I got their limited edition Celtic Warden walnut watch, and this might be the prettiest watch I've ever owned. Holzkern is actually German for wood core, and that makes sense with their watches. Each and every one is either made out of or incorporates wood, so each and every one is unique. All of the watches also incorporate natural materials like pearls, stone, gems, and even leaves, each to make a beautiful piece that'll make you stop and say,
ooh, that's pretty.
But they don't just make watches. They also make jewelry like rings, necklaces, bracelets, and earrings, all with the same care, attention, and quality as the watches. I'm not usually a jewelry guy, but stuff like their bodyguard necklace might make me change my mind. Their watches and jewelry are also made in small quantities. That means that each drop is unique, and they are responsibly and ethically produced. And they offer free worldwide shipping, with your stuff typically showing up in just 5 to 9 business days. And for people like me in the US, they've already taken care of custom fees and tariff costs, so you won't get a surprise bill. And for Holzkern, Black Friday lasts all week. From November 17th to December 1st, they're having their biggest sale ever, and you can get up to 30% off by clicking our link in the description. This deal won't last forever, so this is the perfect opportunity to get a gift for yourself or that's someone special in your life for the holidays. Thanks again to Holzkern for sponsoring this theory, but let's hop back into Zootopia. Now, all of those little details are, like I said, creative and fun, but they also tell us something important. None of these districts are natural. None of them are supposed to be here. They're all man-made, or mammal-made, I guess. By showing us the how of these landscapes, we're being told that the land of Zootopia isn't a magical world where deserts and rainforests and the Arctic all converge. No, instead, it looks like Zootopia, and the people who made it have gone out of their way to artificially carve out all of these little ecosystems to create the perfect environments for their inhabitants and their needs. On the one hand, you gotta give the engineers who made this happen some props. That takes some serious technological innovation to pull off, something that we are nowhere near able to do to this degree, pun intended, in our own real world. But as you can imagine, messing with the natural climate of an ecosystem this much isn't gonna come without some drawbacks, like some major drawbacks. And all of that meddling with nature would only make life for all Zootopians much, much worse. Let's start off with the climate wall, shall we? Honestly, inspired idea, but just think for a second about how something like this would actually function. I tried to dig up any information about the actual mechanics of the climate wall, but all I could find was this infographic explaining that it has heaters on one side and snowblowers on the other. It's very helpful. So what we're gonna do here is assume that this thing works a little bit like a refrigerator. Now, this is very simplified, but your fridge doesn't actually just make things cold. It actually sucks the heat out of the stuff inside and then dissipates that heat out of the back. So it's cold on one side and warm on the other. It kind of sounds like the climate wall, right? Well, first things first here, that would not be great because it would use a huge amount of energy, like a massive amount. Just one refrigerator can account for anywhere between 7 to 20% of a household's entire electricity consumption. They take a lot of power to run, and that's just one human-sized one. Imagine scaling that up to the size of several buildings. Now, sure, that would have a terrible impact on the environment just from trying to generate that much electricity, but even worse for this environment? Well, think about it. Part of the purpose of the climate wall is to blast hot air into Sahara Square. But do you know what happens to hot air, loyal theorists? It rises. When air heats up, it expands, making it less dense than the air around it, and thus it floats. That's actually how hot air balloons work. But that also means that the air in Sahara Square would be hotter than all of the air around it, and it would literally be sucked into the sky, creating a little bit of a vacuum effect on the ground. And that means that the air from the surrounding areas, like Tundra Town, Savannah Central, and the southeast would flood in, creating massive wind and dust storms. That massive upswell of wind would also carry a lot of the sand and dust from Sahara Square into the sky, and what goes up must come down. This would bathe not only Sahara Square, but all of Zootopia in a continuous cloud of sand. And if you believe that it would just come back down on Sahara Square and nothing else, think again. IRL, millions of tons of sand from the actual Sahara Desert are carried by the wind over to the Americas each year. So going over a few city blocks, that would be nothing. In the end, this excess sand would pollute water, damage machinery and windows, and even cause eye and lung problems for the most vulnerable Zootopians. And even worse, but when that warm air from the desert meets the cold air coming from Tundra Town, that would create what is known as a front. And depending on how those two masses of air would interact with each other, that could create a whole host of weather conditions that could change in the blink of an eye. Think thunderstorms, hailstorms, and even tornadoes. Maybe trying to squeeze these deserts and the Arctic next to each other was kind of a bad idea. And all of that is without mentioning the Rainforest District's sprinklers and their flood of problems. Literally. See, you can't just take a normal forest, add a bunch of rain, and call it a rainforest. Those are completely different types of woodland. Plants that live in tropical rainforests have evolved for millions of years to survive the high temperatures and constant rainfall. As just one example, many plants in rainforests, like the Amazon, have evolved to have waxy leaves and pointed tips that allow water to wick off, preventing them from being weighed down by the excess water. And so, if Zootopia did just take an ordinary forest and started making it rain, well, anyone who's overwatered a houseplant can tell you what will happen. Now, sure, if you're Zootopia, you could just tear down whatever forest used to be there and replace it with plants from another rainforest. But you know what you can't replace? The soil. See, rainforest soil is just built different. Typically, the soil in rainforests tends to be more acidic, and it lacks a bunch of nutrients compared with ordinary soil. But it's also very porous, meaning that it allows more water to just flow through it. So if Zootopia's plan is to just sprinkle water over a forest and call it a day, even if they replaced every tree, blade of grass, and shrub, they'd still have to wrestle with the comparatively less porous soil and having the need for the water to go somewhere. And that would mean excess runoff into the nearby river and, of course, massive flooding into the densely populated Savannah Central. Unpredicted weather events? Check. Constantly coating your city with sand? Check. Accidentally flooding your lowlands in order to create an artificial rainforest? Check. Turns out trying to speed run changing the climate wouldn't be a smart idea. But of course, no place is more symbolic of Zootopia's effect on the environment than its central location, Savannah Central. Rapid expansion. Ironically, one of the biggest challenges that the city of Zootopia has to face is its own success. I mean, just look at Savannah Central from an aerial view. This place is huge. As the creators of Zootopia have come out and said, they took inspiration for the design of Zootopia from many different metropolitan cities, namely Shanghai, Hong Kong, and Brasilia, as well as the usual suspects you might expect like LA, London, New York, and Paris. The creators have also said that they wanted Zootopia not to feel like an American city, but a world city, a real melting pot where species of all kinds can live together peacefully. But of course, as you'd expect, trying to build a city that can house a variety of different mammals comes with its own challenges. For example, size. Zootopia needs to be accommodating for mammals of all sizes, from the tiniest mouse to the largest elephant. One obvious way this happens is through public transportation. As we see in the beginning of the movie, before Judy hops aboard the train to Zootopia, we see multiple doors open allowing various sized animals to disembark. Now, of course, that's a simple enough fix, and a necessary one for Zootopia to truly be inclusive. But it's not just public transportation where the size differences between animals can become a problem. Take Judy and Nick's cop car. The cars in this universe need to allow for both bigger wildebeests and rhinos, but also foxes and rabbits to operate them safely. So is that like a feature I can upgrade in this car? Or do they sell like separate cars for small, medium, and large creatures? And this would not just be true for cars, but for housing as well. Heck, there's an entire neighborhood in Zootopia, Little Rodentia, that is miniaturized so the rodent citizens can avoid getting stepped on. Everything that has to be created in Zootopia needs to be made with these different sizes in mind, which would complicate supply chains and just be a big headache for any product designers or city planners. And there would be a real problem with the population. See, we've talked about this before, but animals of vastly different sizes can take wildly different times to make offspring. Sure, it might take a rhino 15 or 16 months to have a child, but rats reach maturity at just 9 weeks old. Female rats can give birth to around 5 to 12 pups per litter, and they can have over 6 litters per year. That means that one pair of rat parents can, if the conditions are right, produce over 1,250 different offspring per year. Obviously, things might be different in the world of Zootopia, and any rodent characters might not want to have that many kids that fast, but this is something that the people running Zootopia would have to keep in mind. And there's evidence in this world that the populations would grow rapidly, all thanks to other mammals that famously breed quickly. Some would say, like rabbits. Let's take Judy's family and her hometown as an example. They don't technically live in Zootopia proper, but instead around 200 miles away in Bunnyborough. And the thing about this little rural town is that it's packed. shocked. We know from the movie that Judy has around 275 brothers and sisters, but during the first movie, as Judy leaves, we see this sign that keeps an updated tally of the entire population of Bunnyborough, and it says that there are 81 million? 81 million people? In comparison, the most populated city in the world in 2018 was Tokyo, Japan, with 37 million people, and this is a rural town with 81 million. Obviously, the size difference of rabbits and humans would contribute to that, but oh my gosh! If that is how many people live out here in the sticks, what the heck is the population of Zootopia as a whole? Like a billion? And while that might sound ridiculous, that does track with how fast rabbits can reproduce in the real world. According to one calculation made by a professor out of the University of Miami, one single pair of breeding rabbits can create a colony of as many as 184 million descendants in just 7 years. So that 81 million is the more reasonable number compared to the real world. Factoring in the other rabbits and rats and all the other rodents that reproduce quickly, let alone all the other animals, Zootopia is going to become very cramped very soon if it isn't already. And judging by how densely packed the city already seems, where else can they build into unless they tear down the other habitats they've worked so hard to build? But while unpredictable weather and predictable population booms are no doubt problems, they could theoretically be solved with a bit of ingenuity. It wouldn't be easy, don't get me wrong, but Zootopia has managed to come up with interesting solutions for their challenges so far. Perhaps they could overcome this. But there is another problem that wouldn't be so easily solved, and this one would be the end of the city: food insecurity. As we discussed many times throughout this episode, Zootopia is meant to be, well, a utopia, a place where all mammals, both predator and prey, are able to live in harmony. And all of this is only possible because, in Zootopia, predators don't hunt and eat prey anymore. Well, unless they're affected by the night howlers, but that was a whole thing, don't worry about it. Yet, this did get me wondering, if they don't eat meat, what do the predators eat? Like, sure, I get that some animals, like foxes, are omnivores, so they could easily switch between eating bunnies to eating berries. But what about the carnivores? The world of Zootopia is filled with lions and cheetahs and the like that have to eat meat to survive. They don't have a choice, it's how their bodies are built. But thankfully, once again, the creators of Zootopia were able to shed some light on how the carnivores get their fill. They've confirmed that the predators, along with eating plants and the occasional donut, do dine on fish and insects to get their fill of protein. I guess the bugs and fish aren't sentient enough to avoid getting eaten, huh? If so, that might be awkward. Anyway, at first, that seems like a pretty reasonable explanation for how the predators are able to get the meat that they need. But if you start to overthink this, to take this concept just one step further, the entire world falls apart. To understand why, let's imagine back to what this world was like before predators and prey lived in peace, shall we? The predators ate the prey, and the prey ate the plants, berries, and such. Circle of life, Elton John, all that jazz. Now, imagine what happens when the predators decide that they're not going to eat the prey anymore, and instead they're going to feast on the exact same food as the prey. And here's where the problems begin. Where, in the real world, someone like Officer Clawhauser would have eaten Judy, and Judy would have eaten the plants and donuts, now everyone is fighting over the small supply of donuts, plants, insects, and fish. That means that Zootopia is going to be going through their finite supply of food at a faster rate than before. In fact, we even see from the final trailer for Zootopia 2 that Zootopians have turned extracting fish into an automated process, presumably to keep the predators' appetites in check. But since everyone is now eating from that same pool of resources, suddenly food supplies are going to dwindle over time. Combine that with the fact that Zootopia's population is only set to explode from here, like we laid out earlier, more and more animals fighting over a smaller and smaller food supply. It's essentially like the predators were just wiped out of the food chain, which sounds like it would be good for everyone in the environment, but in an ironic twist of fate, removing predators from the food chain, like what happens in Zootopia, would actually make an environment less healthy. In fact, and this is true, it can literally affect the flow of rivers. Really? In Yellowstone National Park, there used to be a lot of wolves in the landscape prior to the 1920s, but when humans moved in, the wolves were considered a nuisance, and they were hunted down and removed from the park. That essentially removed the top predator from the environment, which kicked off a domino effect that, in an ironic twist of fate, made Yellowstone less hospitable to life. You see, the wolves played an important part in that ecosystem. They ate the elk, which in turn ate the grass. So with wolves, the elk's main predator, out of the way, the elk population population exploded, which in turn led to the grass in the area being depleted. This led to more erosion into nearby rivers, making it dirty and less suitable for fish. Basically, the environment was destroyed by taking out the top-level predator. Now, compare that scenario to what happened in Zootopia. Not only have the top predators been removed from the environment, just like the wolves, but in turn, those same predators are now fighting for the same foods as the prey. That'd be like, instead of getting rid of the wolves, if the wolves also started eating the grass. It only serves to make a precarious situation much, much worse. And the absolute cherry on top of this disaster sundae, Judy and Nick, yes, our protagonists from the franchise, through their actions in the first movie, might have accidentally made this food insecurity issue even more dire. Remember how Judy and Nick helped break up that drug ring? Well, the drug was called Night Howler. It turned predators aggressive, but it also had a secret second use as a pesticide. That's right, in the first movie, we learned that Judy's parents, who are produce farmers, also used the Night Howlers as a way to keep bugs off their crops. And so, after Judy exposed the city's government and revealed the dangerous effects of the Night Howlers, I wouldn't be shocked if Night Howlers became straight up illegal after the events of that first film. That would mean that the Hops family farm would have one less insecticide to keep their crops safe, and that means that if they don't find an alternative, there will be a decrease in the supply of produce they're able to, well, produce, leading to even less food being available and making things more precarious. And so, what's their solution? How do they fix this existential threat? What could they possibly do to save Zootopia from its doom? Well, if you look back at our example of the Yellowstone wolves, there is one option, but most of the people of Zootopia aren't going to like it. See, in the 90s, scientists reintroduced wolves back to Yellowstone, and they went ham. Naturally, with their predator back in the food chain, the elk population went down, which sucked for the elk, sure, but it led to the grass in the area flourishing once again. And all in all, it made the entire environment more sustainable. More or less, since all of the people of Zootopia are sentient creatures, they'd have to resort to cannibalism. Barry the bear hanging out with his friends Otto the otter and Randy the rat until he gets hungry enough for lunch. Obviously, there'd be some absolutely terrible issues that would come along with this reintroduction of the predator-prey system into this world. And I mean, it would also go against the entire point and message of the movie, but if you look at the scientific reality of the world of Zootopia set up here, they are going to have to find some solutions for their problems, because if things go south, if food supplies dwindle away, some old habits might start to rear their ugly heads. But hey, that's just a theory. A film theory. And cut. Up next on Film Theory.
What if every one of the worlds that makes up the happiest place on Earth was actually the same world?